further ado, we want to save all our time for our candidates and the questions with Mr. Kovacic. And I want to introduce our Executive Director of the League of Women Voters of Greater Los Angeles, Ninoshka McTaggart, goes by Nosh. Take it away.
Thank you, Genevieve. Hi, I'm the Executive Director of the League of Women Voters of Greater Los Angeles. I want to welcome all of you and thank you for joining us this evening. We're happy to partner with all of our great groups for this candidate forum. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit about the League itself. The League of Women Voters has been an organization that's been around for over 102 years. We're a nonpartisan political organization. We encourage informed and active participation in government, and we work to increase the understanding of major public policy issues and influences. We also influence public policy through education and advocacy. So we're happy to be a part of this forum, and good luck to every one of the candidates tonight. And now I'd like to introduce Nick Remedio, who is the chair of the West Hollywood Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you so much, Nash. Good evening to our residents, our businesses and neighbors and other communities who share an interest in our city's upcoming election and future. It's important to note that candidate forums affiliated with independent and nonpartisan groups, such as the League of Women Voters, and a moderator such as a non-biased media anchor, ensure that all city council candidates are treated in a fair and impartial manner. In the spirit of this impartial forum, the Chamber of Commerce created an unprecedented partnership with resident associations and neighborhood watch groups called Weho for the People. Our participating neighborhoods are the West Hollywood West Residents Association, Weho East, Norma Triangle, the Ogden Orange Grove Owls, West Hollywood North Neighborhood Association, Weho Plummer Park, North Harper and Sweetser Neighborhood Watch, North Kings Road, and the Weho Heights Neighborhood Association. All of these groups joined forces with our chamber to formulate questions and/or topics for candidates important to the West Hollywood community, ensuring the concerns of both residents and businesses throughout the city are addressed. This collaboration was both thorough and completely interactive from start to finish in preparing for this evening's forum, which we believe is critical to the integrity of our forum and will have meaningful effect on the upcoming election, which has an impact to the entire community. We are grateful to this amazing group of individuals from our neighborhood watches and resident associations for formulating the questions with the chamber that we pose tonight to provide informative dialogue as to who we should support in this upcoming election this November. Thank you all. Lastly, special thanks to all of the candidates who are participating in this forum and are running in this election. Of course, to the League of Women Voters of Los Angeles, Robert Kovacic, and NBC4 for being our partner and facilitator of our forums for over a decade of elections. And now it gives me great pleasure to introduce Robert Kovacic with NBC4, a great friend to West Hollywood and a journalist renowned far and wide. Robert.
Thank you very much, Nick. That's very kind of you. And also thank you to the West Hollywood Chamber of Commerce and the League of Women Voters of Greater Los Angeles. It's very exciting for me to be back here. I think this is our 5th time working with the chamber to moderate these forums. And this is something that I'm really looking forward to. And for everyone who is watching at home, we want to welcome you. It is great that you are part of this. For me personally, just to hear that list that Nick just read of the neighborhood groups that are involved, that's unprecedented as far as I'm concerned, to have such a community concern and the community to come together to have you, our candidates, address the issues that are important to them. NBC4 is always in West Hollywood. Why are we always in West Hollywood? Because you are a city that's always making headlines. So let's discuss some of the issues that are important to the community tonight. And we have a lot of ground to cover. But before we do that, we just have to go over a few guidelines. Now, this is ahead of the general election, which is on Tuesday, November 8th. And we have with us, and again, we welcome 11 of the 12 candidates running for 3 West Hollywood City Council seats, and those terms commence in 2023. The deadline to register to vote remember, is 15 days prior to election day to register. And for anyone who's interested, write this down. For more information, go to visit weho.org/elections. Visit weho.org/elections. Okay, candidates, let's cover some of the ground rules. You know, my role here tonight, as it is always, is to keep you on point and of course to keep you on time because again, there's a lot to talk about. The audience can see us. You can't see the audience. The ladies from the League of Women Voters of Greater Los Angeles have the digital clock on the screen, which I and the candidates will be able to see the time remaining so they can wrap up their answers. It is important that you candidates please try to stick to the time allotted. If you do not wrap up quickly, we will mute you. There will be no cross-talking. If this happens, you will be muted. Please be respectful. If someone mentions you in their response and a response is imminent, I may allow a 30-second rebuttal. There will be no opening statements with this forum, but you're going to get plenty of time to tell us why we should vote for you. Remember, these questions were composed by the chamber and those 9 neighborhood groups mentioned earlier, and then those questions were reviewed by the League of Women Voters. Candidates, you will all have equal time to answer each question. To keep things fair and equitable, what we're going to do is jump around a little bit and start topics and end topics with different candidates. And we had initially 12 of you that we were expecting here, and we divided you into 3 groups of 4. So instead now there is going to be 3 groups of 4, but one group will have just 3 people in it since we are at 11 candidates. And I will explain who's in those groups as we move forward. Your closing statements will be 45 seconds for each candidate to wrap up anything that you need to tell us that wasn't already covered. After we do get through with the prepared questions, we are going to spend the latter part of the forum with the audience questions. So audience, if you're joining us from your computer, you can use the Q&A button that's right there on the bottom of your screen to submit your question. If you're using the Zoom mobile app on your cell phone, you can find the Q&A button at the top of your screen that is in between the Zoom icon and the end button. Audience, we encourage you to submit your questions, but I'm going to ask you for a 6 p.m. deadline, which will allow the League of Women Voters to go through those questions and vet those questions to ensure they're not redundant and make sure they're not questions we already asked. And then those questions will be randomly asked to the candidates. And of course, please make sure your candidates are not a personal attack or a bias. We ask you to refrain, audience, from any general comments. We want specific questions that you did not hear answered, and those questions can be for the candidates that are here tonight. Candidates, this is a forum. It's not a debate. We expect you to practice your proper decorum, be on good personal behavior, no personal attacks of any nature, including private matters that have no bearing on the candidate's public persona. We often receive a number of questions, that cover the same topic. So in that situation, we may select one question to just have you go over. And depending on the number of questions submitted by our audience, we may not have sufficient time, audience, to ask all of your questions because we are limited in our time and we do want to get started in just about a minute. No placards, no signage, no promotional material of any kind. And again, this is going to live on. Not only is it live, but this is going to be on the Chamber of Commerce's social media platforms, the League of Women Voters social media platforms. So please, candidates, encourage your supporters. Audience, if you have family or friends that are driving home tonight and can't watch this right now or can't make it to their computer, let them know they can tune in at any time. All right, so here we go. Are you all ready? Welcome, candidates, once again. Welcome, audience, for joining us. And we promised for those of you who are in our audience and for the candidates itself, thanks to the questions submitted by the community, this is going to, I think, be a very enlightening 2 hours. And I really do think by the end of this, we're going to get to know all of you a whole lot better. Candidates, what I'm going to do with the first question is I like to call this a rapid fire question. I ask you to keep this very short. I'm not going to have the timer up because that's how short I want your question, the answer to be. And this is my rapid fire question, which will be asked of all of you. And I am going to start with this question, rapid fire, and then I'll go down my list. First question, how long have you lived in West Hollywood? Are you registered to vote here? Chelsea Byers.
I first got involved in the community in 2015. I've been proud to live in West Hollywood since 2020. I have been registered to vote in this city, voted
Thank
in
you,
the last
Chelsea.
election. Thank you.
John Heilman.
I have lived in the city for almost 40 years, and I am registered to vote here and have always voted here.
Zakia Wright.
Thank you. I've been active in the city since 2019, and yes, I'm registered to vote in West Hollywood.
Lauren Meister.
Yes, I've lived in the city over 30 years, and yes, I'm registered to vote.
Robert Oliver.
I first stepped foot as a young gay man at 14 in 2003. I moved here 10 years ago, and my husband and I bought a home here 5 years ago. And yes, of course, I'm registered to vote, and I hope everyone watching from home is as well.
Jordan Cockram.
Hello, I've lived in West Hollywood for 9 years, and yes, I am a proud registered voter. Thank you.
Adam Darvish.
Yes, thank you, Robert. I'm Adam Darvish. I've lived in West Hollywood for over 27 years. I'm a community advocate, and I'm registered to vote. Thank you.
Sarah Adolphson.
Hi, thank you. I've lived here for 16 years and I'm a proud registered voter.
John Duran.
32 years, always vote.
Marquita Thomas.
Thank you. I have lived in West Hollywood for 27 consecutive years, and I am registered to vote here.
Steve Martin.
I have lived here for 40 years and voted in every election.
So candidates, thank you. And thank you for being respectful of the time. And we appreciate that. That was an important question from our community, and gives you sort of an idea of the group order that we're going to be in. Okay. Now, this next question is going to be given an allotted time of 60 seconds for each candidate to respond. Candidates, 60 seconds. Please do be aware of the timer that's on your screen. And this is going to be, we're going to start with group 2. So we'll introduce group 2 with these 4, and then we'll move to group 3 and group 1, but it is the same question for all of you. And the question, what qualifies you to be an effective council member? You have 60 seconds, and we are going to begin with group 2 and Lauren Meister.
Thank you so much, Robert. Great question. Besides living in the city over 30 years, I started out a neighborhood watch captain, handing out newsletters for my neighborhood association. I moved on to be a neighborhood leader, president of West Hollywood West Residents Association for 8 years. I then became a commissioner in the Public Safety Commission. I was also a planning commissioner. And then I finally got elected to the West Hollywood City Council in 2015 and reelected in 2019. I believe that I'm qualified because I have been working with the community for many, many years. I listen to residents. I try to come up with policies that make sense for our community.
Thank you. Robert Oliver, what qualifies you to be an effective council member?
Thank you, Robert. Great question. At the heart of my professional experience are the years I spent working as a neighborhood advocate in the District of Los Angeles, directly bordering West Hollywood. I got to work with residents, businesses, neighborhood associations, and other stakeholders to address the day-to-day quality of life issues in their neighborhoods, whether it was cut through traffic and speeding, adding stop signs and speed bumps or other traffic treatments, cutting through red tape for businesses and helping expedite processes and city bureaucracies, or helping mitigate the issues caused by new development projects. I have hands-on experience working in local government. I've also got federal government experience working for Senator Dianne Feinstein and nonprofit experience working for the Jewish Federation and Pacific Pride Foundation. I have the experience to start day one. I've been the person that people have known that they can depend on, and I want to be the person that West Hollywood residents know that they can depend on when they need help from City Hall.
Jordan Cockrum. What qualifies you to be an effective council member?
Hi, thank you so much. Well, ever since I was young, my parents made sure that I understood how important it was to be involved in what's going on in our government in our day-to-day lives. I think that I would be an effective leader on city council because I listen to what matters most to the residents. And when you're on city council, it's important that you are actually focusing and paying attention to what those people's wants are, because so many people who are in city government are really in it for themselves or are doing it because they have their own agenda. But what people forget is that you have to really pay attention to what matters most to people and how you can impact their day-to-day lives, and make sure that you're accomplishing goals for them, because that's ultimately what they are looking to elect you for. And I see that my time is coming up, so thank you so much.
Thank you. Adam Darvish. What qualifies you to be an effective council member?
Thank you. I'm an immigrant that migrated to the US at the age of 18 without knowing English, without knowing anyone, and put myself through undergraduate and master's degree, and became a known national healthcare leader through my perseverance and hard work. And recently I was involved in an accident in the city that made me want to give back to the community, because what I got from the community, the support that I got, and got me involved politically. I've been a public comment speaker at several commissions and city council for 2 years now. And truly my intention is to give back to the community. I'm not a politician. I'm a healthcare worker of over 30 years, and also serve public and different communities, healthcare communities I've served. So I'm here to serve and not supported by any special interest group. So thank you so much.
In 60 seconds, Sarah Dolphin, what qualifies you to be an effective council member?
Thank you, Robert. Well, I come from a lifetime and family of service. My father served in the Army, my brother's Coast Guard and Navy. I served our country as a U.S. Peace Corps volunteer in the former Soviet Republic of Georgia. In my day job, I serve the global and national community, helping clients do the good in the world that they want to see. And then locally, I'm a part of our neighborhood watch. I've been involved with National Night Out and building our block party. And I have my master's degree in public administration. And like many people here, I'm not a career politician. I am here because I want to do right by my community. And in my work, I'm actually an agent. I have an agency here in West Hollywood, and we facilitate the change that people want to see. And so I would be doing the same for the residents of West Hollywood.
John Duran, what qualifies you to be an effective council member?
I've been coming to West Hollywood since 1975 when I saw the Rocky Horror Picture Show at the Tiffany Theater on the Sunset Strip, which is where I live. I served from this council for 20 years, and a lot of my handiwork can be seen around the city. The nighttime shuttle, the pickup line, was my creation. The dog parks in West Hollywood Park, also my creation. Initiating a theater district in the center city, so we have live theater and live cultural performances, also my creation. I think people know that over my 20 years of service on the council, that I was often very deliberative and often was the swing vote in deciding which way to go. But my day job is I'm an attorney, started many organizations, the Life AIDS Lobby, Equality California, which secured marriage equality for LGBT people, and have most recently been working on issues around addiction and substance abuse recovery in our community, leading the effort to save the log cabin on Robertson Boulevard, and also to secure a permanent home for the West Hollywood Alcohol and Drug Recovery Center. Those are all examples of the kind of work that I do.
Marquita Thomas, what qualifies you to be an effective council member?
Thank you so much, Robert. Well, first off, I just simply love this city. I've lived in the city for 27 consecutive years, as I mentioned. I have strong ties to the community. I'm a renter, so enhancing renter protections and habitability is a priority. As a chamber CEO, I understand the needs of the business community as well as working residents. I have served on the Lesbian Visibility Committee, the Lesbian and Gay Advisory Board, the Human Services Commission, and the Planning Commission. I understand land use. I understand the city's social services contracts. I understand how the city works and can bridge existing gaps to make sure that businesses and residents are all succeeding. Thank you.
Steve Martin, what qualifies you to be an effective council member?
Well, I was a volunteer during the cityhood movement back in 1984, and I have served as a city council member and a neighborhood activist the entire time I've been here. When I was on the council, I was responsible for the redesign and takeover of Santa Monica Boulevard, Kings Road Park. I was instrumental in creating the redevelopment agency on the east side, which resulted in scores of affordable housing being created and set West Hollywood on a path toward prosperity. You know, in all my years of activism, both on and off the council, I've learned that if you're a leader, you don't rule, you represent. And we really need to get back to a community sense where we're listening to the people and actually representing the people and empowering people.
Chelsea Byers, 60 seconds, please. What qualifies you to be an effective council member?
Thank you. As your current Human Services Commissioner here in West Hollywood, I already serve on the front line of implementing policy, connecting government, and providing direct services to community members. In this role, I support staff in the work of overseeing more than 30 contracts that we manage with various partners and collaborating agencies, and I understand the importance of accountability through this lens to ensure our dollars are well spent. As a contract city, I'm well suited for this work of fiscal responsibility and leadership. I'm also an appointed member of the Housing Element Task Force here in West Hollywood, where I supported staff in developing our plan for housing policy implementation for the next 8 years. My professional background is in reducing barriers people have in accessing government and elected leadership. I know what it means to get more people engaged in our most pressing issues, which is what we need if we're going to tackle them. I am a renter and I am connected to the deep needs of the vast majority of this city. I do not own a car, so I see the city from the ground level and understand the challenges we all experience in our day-to-day lives. And I'm ready to put my hard work ethic into making our lives better. Thank you.
John Heilman, what qualifies you to be an effective council member, please?
Well, thank you, Robert. Like Marquita, I love this city, and I think that's something that all of the candidates share. I was a city council member for 36 years. I served on the incorporation committee. I served as mayor for 8 years. It takes a lot to serve that long, and that requires you to listen to the community, to pay attention to the staff, to work collaboratively with the residents, the staff, the business community. Professionally, I'm a law school professor. In addition to my law degree, like Sarah, I also have my master's of public administration, as well as a master's in real estate. And I think both my education and my experience enable me to serve the community.
And finally, Zakia Wright, what qualifies you to be an effective council member?
Save the best for last, Robert. I appreciate it. And so I am uniquely positioned and qualified for this moment in West Hollywood's history. As a person that grew up in the South, I understand what it's like to not have that sense of community and to be without rights. And so when I first came to West Hollywood back in 2012, I absolutely fell in love with the city, and I knew that I had to make it my forever home. Like many folks that may have moved here or folks that grew up here, they understand how special this city is. And so understanding that and understanding where I came from, I'm certainly one of those folks that wants to uphold that legacy as we move the city forward. In my day-to-day life, I'm an attorney. And so I'm used to having tough conversations, listening to both sides of issues and coming to a resolution. And I think that skill is much needed on our city council. And I'm also a community leader. Folks that know me, folks that have interacted with me on the LGBTQ+ advisory board and rent stabilization know that I'll always be a resource. And if they don't know me, they will, and I'll be a resource for you as well. Thank you.
Candidates, thank all of you. You are off to a tremendous start, and we respect that you were very much aware of the time clock, and that really helped us a lot and is moving this forum forward. Even before we started tonight, I'm sure you're all aware that this forum made headlines of its own. This is a rapid fire question. Again, you don't need to be aware of the clock, but I am going to ask you to keep your answers brief to 10 seconds if you can. And the question is, do you agree with the West Hollywood City Council decision to not televise this forum? If so, why or why not? And I'm going to read this one more time and then we'll go down the list. Do you agree with the City Council's decision to not televise this forum? If so, why or why not? We are going to start with group 3 at the top, Sarah Dolphin.
All right. No, I don't agree with it. I think it hurts democracy, and I think it's unfair to many of our senior citizens who may not know how to use Zoom or have access to a computer or tablet to be able to log into tonight's forum.
John Duran.
No, it's not transparent. It's not democratic. It's the current council and the way in which they're playing politics and gamesmanship rather than governing this community is one of the reasons I'm running again.
Marquita Thomas.
No, I don't agree with it. I believe in transparency. We have a very active and engaged community who want to hear from the people who are running to govern this city, and they deserve to hear everyone's platform.
Steve Martin.
No, this really reflects the dysfunction and the immaturity of the current city council. It almost boggles the mind, like we're in a third world republic.
Chelsea Byers.
No, I will always support a transparent and accessible government, and our resources should be used accordingly. Thank you.
John Heilman.
No, I don't agree. And I think it's indicative of the problem between the council right now and the business community. And that's a problem we need to solve.
Zakia Wright.
I believe that the public deserves access to all the information that they can from candidates since the field is so wide. And so any non-biased events that are able to display our visions for the city, I think should be accessible to the public.
Lauren Meister.
Thank you. I disagree with the decision. I had to recuse myself from that discussion because I am on the council, but as I watched it from another room, I was just in shock. There has never been a time that we haven't televised this forum. And it's an insult to the League of Women Voters and to you, Robert, the fact that my colleagues decided to censor this event.
Robert Oliver.
No, I do not agree with the council's decision. I think that we should be looking for more opportunities to engage the public, to inform the public. Democracy should be transparent, and there are people who can't access Zoom. So I think televising the forum would have been a better idea. And going forward, we need to create a uniform policy and talk about these issues long before the forum takes place.
Jordan Cochran.
No, I disagree with the fact that they wouldn't air this on Weho TV. I think it's an example of censorship, and it denies transparency to the voters, and it prevents certain people with the ability to watch what they otherwise might not be able to watch.
Adam Darvish.
Yes, I disagree with the council on this decision, and the exact reason I'm passionate about running to bring down the walls between the residents, the barriers of communication, and the council and city hall. So I totally disagree, and I'm not a politician for that reason, and I'm here for the people.
Candidates, thank you. Another headline City of West Hollywood made recently was regarding public safety. This is going to be a question for all of you. You all have 60 seconds for your answer. And this will be, again, to all of you, and we are going to start with our group 1 here, but we're going to work backwards. So the question, candidates, do you agree with reducing the size of the sheriff's department, and what are your plans to reduce crime and increase public safety in the city of West Hollywood? One more time, do you agree with the reducing of the size of the sheriff's department, and what are your plans to reduce crime and increase public safety? Candidates, again, we're going to ask you to stick to 60 seconds. We are going to start with Zakia Wright.
Thank you. I think one of the interesting things about what council did is that it allows 9 months to see if the 2 officers that were reduced is effective in decreasing crime or if crime has risen. And so when elected, once that comes before me, I'm happy to look at the data that came back and to hear community input on whether it was effective. I don't want to make decisions before having all of the information and to see if this works. But if it doesn't, I absolutely would support us bringing the numbers back up to their levels and maintaining them. My solutions for making sure that we address public safety in the city is making sure that our residents feel safe and making sure our businesses feel secure. I think the ways that we do that is we increase foot patrols in neighborhood and residential corridors based on data and based on trends and community input. And we work with our sheriff's department and our other public safety officials to ensure that they have the tools and the resources that they need in order to do their jobs effectively. Thank you.
John Heilman, you have 60 seconds.
Thank you, Robert. I did not agree with the decision to cut the sheriff's budget. If I'm elected, I would immediately take action to restore the funding to the sheriff's department. But in addition to that, I want to create a mechanism with our sheriff's department so that they can communicate not only with the block by block security ambassadors, but with private security that work at businesses and residents in West Hollywood. I also want to make sure that new businesses have security systems in place, including ring-style outdoor cameras that will help us if crimes do occur so that we can detect the wrongdoers. Finally, I would want to make sure that public safety commissioners who serve the city are actual residents or own a business in the city. And I would want to make sure that there was better training for all of the people who are serving in that very important role in the city.
Chelsea Byers.
Thank you. I am also eager to see how this decision plays out. I am very much in support of clarifying the role of our sheriff's deputies. We would never expect sheriff deputies to write parking tickets in our town because it's not a good use of their time. And the same goes for so many other incidents. I believe block by block and the new funding that's given to them to expand their sources allows for a much needed response that the community's been asking for. We've been wanting more foot patrol. We've been wanting more eyes in our community that are dedicated to the work of public safety. So this is a really amazing pilot run that we're going to enforce. When it comes to our unhoused community, there are so many things that we can do to ensure that they are not a source of crime or challenges in our community. I want to ensure that we have a fully funded behavioral crisis unit. Until that happens, our sheriffs are going to continue to be the frontline response to our unhoused crisis, and that will continue to drain their resources and time from other needed incidences. So I am very eager to see how this plays out and really excited to continue to clarify the role of our sheriff's deputies. I think that'll allow for greater transparency, accountability, and oversight in every single department for public safety. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidates, again, the question, do you agree with reducing the size of the sheriff's department, and what are your plans to reduce crime and increase public safety? With that said, Adam Darvish, 60 seconds.
I take more than that for this topic. I was a victim of an accident that almost killed me in the city 2 years ago. I disagree with that decision. As a council member, I would support our sheriff's station and bring the walls down, the communication channels between the sheriff's station and our city hall. And actually, it would even have block by block team to be managed by the sheriff's station or build channels so they could communicate and collaborate together. I would improve the technology. They're operating with old technology. I've asked for cameras for mobile police stations that I was told it costs $100,000. And I was told our city cannot afford that. That should not be the case. Beverly Hills has those. They have cameras at each intersection, and we should be able, as a city, progressive city, to afford cameras. So as a victim of an accident, I feel that the public safety should have those victims on as a commissioner. Thank you.
Jordan Cockrum.
Thank you so much. I absolutely do not agree with decreasing the size or funding for the sheriff's department. As we've all seen, crime has been on the rise, and we see it every day. As a son of a former police officer, I know how important it is that we provide our police officers with the resources that they need to do their jobs effectively. I've actually spoken with Captain Mulder, and I know that they work well together with Block by Block. And I absolutely support Block by Block as well, but I don't support reducing the sheriff's funding. I want our sheriffs to have the resources that they need to keep us safe. And by supporting our businesses and local economy, we can easily have both a fully funded sheriff's department and a block by block security ambassadors. And that overall would help us reduce crime and keep our city safe. Thank you.
Robert Oliver.
Thank you. I would have supported the city manager's proposed budget. I think it was a reasonable and balanced budget proposal, and it maintained our current or our former sheriff's deployment. But I think we need to ultimately stop playing politics with public safety. There's too much at risk when we allow people to play politics with our safety. We live in a city that has the resources such that we don't have to choose between fighting crime and providing for those most vulnerable in our community. We have to hold law enforcement accountable, and I absolutely support an audit, but we have to add resources to complement and augment what sheriff's deputies can provide. Those are resources for homelessness, substance abuse, and mental health, as well as cameras and license plate readers along our commercial corridors to address and deter crime. We have to prioritize public safety. If we're not a safe city, nothing else that we do is possible. So I would not have supported the reduction.
Lauren Meister.
Thank you, Robert. I voted against cutting our sheriff's deputies and ended up having to vote against our own budget because of it. I don't believe that you go into a pilot and start changing all the variables, and then you really don't know what's working and what's not working. We also know that because the security ambassadors are unarmed, when they do have a problem, they call the sheriffs. So now you're adding 30% more security ambassadors, and you're cutting the number of sheriffs. It doesn't make any sense. I recently brought an item forward to have more deputy training. Also was responsible for pursuing the study on policing so we can see what things we can fix. I believe that you don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. You try to fix what you can fix. I also believe we have a new captain and that we should be supporting him in every way possible in order to make sure that he succeeds. And I do believe in additional foot patrol and bike patrol of our sheriffs to have more visibility in our neighborhoods and commercial corridors.
Again, candidates, do you agree with reducing the size of the sheriff's department? And what are your plans to reduce crime and increase public safety? Steve Martin, 60 seconds, please.
Well, I want to thank Mayor Meister for her vote against the defunding. I think most people view the cuts in law enforcement as just a cynical betrayal of the public trust. The city council is playing politics with people's safety. And, I've been opposing these cuts since back in February when the Public Safety Commission voted to reduce the sheriffs by 10 deputies, reducing us from 60 to 50. And, I've been to council meetings, I've been to Public Safety Commission meetings, speaking out, trying to restore the funding and try to bring some sanity back to this community. I mean, we're going through an unprecedented rise in crime. The Public Safety Commission and the City Council know that the response times from the sheriff are very long, and you can't cut sheriffs and expect to get better response times. People just feel that they're not being listened to and that their safety doesn't matter. And we really need to restore funding back to pre-COVID levels and add foot patrols and bike patrols and spend whatever it takes.
Marquita Thomas.
Thank you. This is a big question for 60 seconds, but I'll try. First, I want to say that I provided public comment to support the city manager's proposal to maintain the sheriff's budget while expanding our block by block and expanding our social services program. The motion by the mayor pro tem was to remove 5 deputies incrementally. 2 of them will be removed in September and another 3 or 4 will be potentially removed in March or April. So anyone who's concerned about the removal of deputies should vote for candidates who make a pledge not to remove those deputies. I am that candidate. When I'm voted on to city council, I pledge to the residents of West Hollywood and all of our stakeholders that I will not vote to remove those deputies. Our public safety is too important. To improve public safety, we need to do a litany of things. We need to do business hardening with security cameras and private security, decoy vehicles. We need to expand our cops team. We need to increase foot patrols, implement the behavioral crisis response unit. We need visual and auditory alerts. My time is up, but I've got a long list of ways that we can implement better public safety.
John Duran, 60 seconds.
Recent vote to defund the police in West Hollywood was a tragic mistake. The Public Safety Commission, along with Mr. Oliver, voted to cut $3 million and 10 deputies from our city. It's the Public Safety Commission and the current council that's playing politics with our community's public safety. And that restoration of funding has to be returned. I applaud Mayor Meiser for being the only sane vote on the council on this particular issue. The next thing I want to say is that I recently received the endorsement of ALADS, the Deputy Sheriff's Union, because they think I'm one of the best candidates to return public safety to the city of West Hollywood. And it's ironic because if you know what I do in my day job, I often have the same deputy sheriffs on the witness stand. But Steve Martin knows, John Heilman knows, we did a lot of work with the West Hollywood Sheriff Conference Committee to reform the sheriffs over 3 decades of very hard work. And having these young people come in and trying to turn our public safety upside down for politics is really regrettable.
And finally, Sarah Dolson.
Thank you, Robert. I agree with a lot of my fellow candidates here. Day one, I would reinstate the 4 deputies that have been cut. I think this is actually one of the main reasons I'm here today. I don't feel safe in my community, and I know many of my neighbors do not either. So, and we can't afford right now to wait and see how the block ambassadors are going to do. We have to get the police back on our streets, and something I'm really interested in exploring is a beat cop, is a foot patrol system in our city. And studies have proven that beat policing creates greater trust between residents and police. It helps prevent crime, it helps reduce crime, and it helps residents feel safer overall. So those are the 2 things that I would do on day one, is explore those. And I think also just building greater community, allowing our citizens to get to know our deputies and vice versa. I think that we could benefit from more volunteer programs and more national night outs and more block parties and more opportunities for us to get to know each other so that we can truly build community and help us all feel much safer.
Candidates, thank you. From our neighborhood and community groups, we are now going to turn to homelessness. This is going to be a question for all of you. This is an all-group question. I know it's a big topic. I am going to ask you, as you see there on the clock, to try and keep your answers to 45 seconds each. And we'll give you a second to formulate your answers to this question. How are you planning to address the growing issue of homelessness in West Hollywood? Again, how are you planning to address the growing issue of homelessness in West Hollywood? We are going to start with group 2 on this, and we'll move to Jordan to kick things off. Jordan, 45 seconds, please.
Thank you so much. So I actually spoke with a man named Dr. Robert Cavalli, who is working with the city of Santa Monica. Santa Monica's partnered with a company called Aikido Labs to create a program that's called Project Connect. Project Connect has helped identify what they call high utilizers of emergency services, and that's been able to help them get specific resources that they need, whether that be transitionary housing, drug and alcohol rehab, or mental health care. After being in Santa Monica for only 1 year, Project Connect has reduced unnecessary arrests by 37% and unnecessary interaction with emergency services by 33%. This helps their city save resources, time, and money. So I want to bring a program like Project Connect to West Hollywood. Thank you.
Robert, you're up. 45 seconds, please.
Thanks, Robert. In LA County, we voted overwhelmingly in 2017 to pass Measure H. We voted to invest more of our tax dollars to find solutions to homelessness, but we're not getting the same return in our city. We don't have a voice in the Los Angeles Homeless Service Authority. This is a regional issue, and we need to find regional solutions. more access to shelter beds, mental health resources, and substance abuse resources. If I'm elected, I will fight at the state and county level to ensure that we in West Hollywood are getting the resources that we need to add things like more mental evaluation teams, more CARES teams to offer wraparound services to people experiencing homelessness. But overall, I can say, I don't think what we're doing is working, and we need to change the status quo. The crisis is only growing, and it's time for a change.
Lauren?
There you go. Hi. First of all, looking forward, I want to place more pressure on the county to provide additional MET teams and actually utilize the Measure H funds to build mental health and rehab facilities and housing with wraparound services. And if they don't want to do that, then they need to give us the money so that we can partner with neighboring cities, because as we all know, this is a regional problem. I support the care courts concept and want to lobby the state to make it easier for the city or a nonprofit to obtain conservatorship when needed. We have to have compassion, but when behavior crosses to criminal behavior, our sheriffs have to intervene, which is why the MET teams are so important. So I would say that because it's a regional problem, it is very difficult for us to do this on our own. And if the county's not going to put in the money, then we need to get it from them.
Adam.
I believe I'm the only Adam here, so thank you, Robert. Yeah, so this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. I've been a board member at our Hospital Association in Southern California, also a board member in Sacramento for California Hospital Association and American Hospital Association. I can tell you 10 years ago in a board meeting in downtown LA, we brought the county responsible team into our board meeting to talk about, you know, there are funds that you have and there's a homeless that are at our ERs and come in and need help, you know, help us, let's collaborate. The county didn't want to help at that point. They said, well, that's your problem. You know, they come through ER, becomes your problem. So we were able to reach an agreement and now work with the county after so many years and come up with solutions. I'm running out of time. I can talk about this for hours. Thank you.
The question, candidates, how are you planning to address the growing issue of homelessness in the city of West Hollywood? We're going to move now to Marquita. 45 seconds.
Thank you. This is a very important question. Homelessness is a humanitarian crisis, and all of our solutions for homelessness need to be both compassionate and effective. We need to prioritize home retention by continuing to fund our rental assistance program, as well as making sure our residents are aware of their rights so that they can stay in their homes. If someone does slip into homelessness, we need to provide more local wraparound services and also try to reconnect unhoused individuals with family and friends who can assist in their care. And once we connect someone to housing, we need to make sure that we're continuing to do outreach to connect them to resources so that they don't slip back into homelessness. And finally, when our budget surplus returns to pre-pandemic levels, half of our surplus should be dedicated to housing and homelessness.
John Duran, 45 seconds.
One of the things I disagreed with the council doing was opening a homeless facility at the Holloway Motel near Holloway and Santa Monica Boulevards. That's an error. In the middle of a commercial district, to open a facility like that is going to only attract more homelessness, impacting the condo owners along Kings Road, both north and south of Santa Monica Boulevard. It's going to make a problem even more dangerous than it already is. I think one of the biggest problems is the severely mentally ill. Those people with alcohol and drug issues, we can get into treatment. Unemployed, we can get into housing. The severely mentally ill don't even know they're severely mentally ill. Expanding the conservatorship law so that the sheriffs can respond and react. Is it cruel and inhumane to involuntarily take them, or is it more cruel and inhumane to watch them dig through trash cans looking for a meal? It's time that we really treat this issue like what it is, not only compassion, but protecting the people who live and work here also.
Sarah Dolson.
Thank you. I agree with John Duran. I think the first thing that we have to do is take care of our most severely mentally ill homeless residents. That is the biggest threat, I think, to public safety. It's what I experience when I take my morning walks, and I know many others do as well. So, and that is not housing. That is real care, real treatment, real compassion, and also working with the sheriff's deputies to make sure that we are protecting our citizens, but also taking care of those residents as well. I have concerns about the Holloway Motel, but I understand that if we're going to be putting wraparound services there, full-time behavioral health services, full-time social workers, I think that could really be a potential solution to getting our homeless off the streets and housed and give them dignity.
Thank you. Steve Martin.
You're muted.
There you are, Steve. You have 45 seconds.
Got muted here. Hello. Hello.
We can hear you, Steve. You have 45 seconds.
Family law attorney, I deal with mental health and drug addiction issues every day. I agree with Lauren. We need to get the care courts up and running. We need to deal with the people who are most severely impacted, and you really need to do that through a conservatorship. I do think that it's really important for us to step up. West Hollywood needs to step up, and the transitional housing facility at Holloway can be a success, but only if it's run correctly. And if I'm elected, it's going to be something that's not going to be a homeless hangout. It's going to be wraparound services for people who really need it, and it'll be a great sign of success and something that we can all be proud of. But we really need to, I think it's very frustrating right now with the Holloway issue because people just don't trust the city council to do the right thing. And, we do a lot of good things in West Hollywood for homeless services, but unfortunately we're surrounded by the city and county of Los Angeles, which makes it difficult.
One more time for our final group. How are you planning to address the growing issue of homelessness in West Hollywood? John Heilman, 45 seconds.
Thank you. So number one, we need to prevent homelessness among our residents, and we can do that by expanding our poverty reduction program, expanding our rental assistance. And I also want to acknowledge that the city already does a lot. It funds shelter beds, it funds rehab beds, it funds outreach workers, it funds mental health evaluation teams. But as Robert said, it's not enough. And what we really need is the authority with nonprofits and with families to get people into the type of care they need. As I worked on this issue for many years, that was one of the most frustrating things, having beds available, having services available, but people who had such severe problems that it was so difficult or impossible to get them into the services that they really need.
Chelsea, 45 seconds.
Thank you. I spent 3 years working with United Way's Everyone In campaign, educating people on solutions to homelessness. So I'm uniquely qualified and positioned to engage the community in this exact issue. Nothing good comes quickly, and we cannot default to criminalization for a quick fix. Poverty and mental health are not criminal. I've been supporting West Hollywood city staff for years to advance the visionary behavioral crisis unit that will soon unveil for the community. This will include mental health services, outreach workers, and more. But this program is set up for failure unless we can fully fund it. It cannot be a limited program only available 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. We know mental health crises do not show up at one point in the day. We need the service available through the more challenging hours of the night. We cannot solve these challenges while we expect other cities to do it for us, which is also why I'm excited to have the Holloway Hotel as a transitional shelter in our city limits.
Zakia, you have 45 seconds.
Thank you. In LA County and many counties in different communities, they have been experimenting with different approaches, and many of them they have found to be very successful in order to end the endless cycle of homelessness and being unhomed. And so luckily we can learn from those examples. The commonality between those strategies is the recognition that the root cause of homelessness has to be addressed if we're going to eradicate it. And that translates to understanding how people ended up being homeless in the first place. The harsh truth is that the longer a person is homeless, the greater their decline in their mental health. And so we need sustained collaborative solutions, including more housing, career training, private rooms, and supportive housing in order to address these. And these solutions will require regional partnerships. West Hollywood can't do it alone. And that's going to take public-private investments and the collective determinations to not let our neighbors suffer the harsh conditions of living on the street. Thank you.
Candidates, thank you. Thank you all for your answers to those questions. We are almost to the halfway point. You're doing a terrific job. And we now move to a topic of governance and ethics. Now, with this category, candidates, what we are going to do is we have individual questions for your individual groups. So I'm going to ask one question, and we are going to start here with group 2. And this is going to be just for this group. So for group 2, you have 45 seconds to answer this question. And the topic again, governance and ethics. The question is, for my group, how will you maintain your independence from special interest groups? The 4 of you will answer this. Are Robert Oliver, starting with you, and then we'll go to Adam, Lauren, Meister, and then Jordan Cockrum to bring it home. So Robert, 45 seconds. How will you manage to maintain your independence from special interest groups?
Thanks, Robert. I'm running to be an independent voice on City Council. I'm running as your neighbor. If I'm elected, my first priority will always be the residents of this city. This is my home. This is where I grew up as a gay man, where I met my husband playing West Hollywood dodgeball, where we got legally married and adopted our dog, and where we were fortunate to be able to buy our first home. So the decisions I make will never be influenced by who supported my campaign or didn't support my campaign. My decisions will always be based on what is right for the residents of this city and the health, safety, and future of West Hollywood. That's why I'm running, and I will always be a measured and independent voice on City Council.
Adam Darvish, you have 45 seconds.
This is an easy one for me to answer because I am running this campaign without any contributions from the unions or from developers or elected officials, and I'm not accepting any money from them either. So as an immigrant with strong values, I believe that that's what's wrong in our system, where candidates are being supported by different groups, and depending on the candidate, obviously it could affect their decision making. So in my case, I'm staying pure, not asking for any money, and self-funding as a healthcare professional from bedside to management, working for public companies. Integrity and transparency has been on top of my list. And as a resident, I'll promise you that I will work hard for you. Thank you.
Lauren Meister.
Thank you for the question. I think the one thing, since I've been on council since 2015, is I'm known to be the independent voice on council. And I have never let special interests influence my votes. If you want to know whether or not someone is going to support big development, maybe look at who the developers are donating to them. I have not taken any donations from big developers. In fact, over 85% of my donations are from residents and businesses in the city of West Hollywood, small businesses. So I would just say that I've always done my homework and make my decisions based on what's in front of me.
Jordan Cockrum.
Thank you so much. I know I have a difficult last name, just so everyone knows it's Cockrum. Not that it matters.
Oh, my apologies.
That's okay. I know it's difficult. Transparency and accountability have been a huge part of my campaign since day one. There are candidates in this specific group, actually, that you're asking this question to, who are taking money from special interests. People are getting really tired of elected officials taking advantage of their positions and prioritizing their own goals and power over the needs and wants of the residents. Commission and board appointees are a great example of that, actually. I've made it a promise that my appointees are going to be people who are qualified for the commissions or boards that they served on, not just someone who gave the maximum contribution to my campaign. I'm going to actually listen to the residents and truly represent them when I am on council. Thank you so much.
And thank you, candidates in group 2. Again, randomly selected to be in these groups as we separate them up. Group 3, governance and ethics, your question. And these are the people who will be answering this question in group 3, no particular order here. We will start with John Duran, to Steve Martin, to Sarah Adolphson, to Marquita Thomas. This is your question, 45 seconds to answer it. Should all members of the commissions and advisory boards live in West Hollywood? And should they meet any specific qualifications to be appointed to a specific board? The question again for group 3 is the following. Should all members of the commissions and advisory boards live in West Hollywood? And should they meet any specific qualifications to be appointed to a specific board? John Duran, you have 45 seconds.
Thank you, Robert. Yes, they should live in West Hollywood. There have been some boards where we've had difficulty finding enough people to serve. Primarily, I think of the Transgender Advisory Board, where we've had to reach out for specialties outside of the community. But I believe generally they should be residents or business owners within the city that serve on commissions and boards. I think the troubling thing I've noticed in the past 2 years since I've left is politics seems to be the primary motivating force. People are getting appointed to commissions and boards because of their politics, like Lindsay Horvath appointing the daughter of the LA Times publisher to the Public Safety Commission to defund our police to get the supervisor endorsement in exchange for that. That's absurd. That is horrible that you and I, the residents of West Hollywood, have to suffer for that sort of political appointment, and I would oppose it.
Steve Martin, 45 seconds.
Yes, I think all board and commission members need to live in West Hollywood. We do need to make some arrangement for the Transgender Advisory Board. Maybe we just make it a task force so we can have consistency. I'm not a big person who worries about titles. But you know, I think as John Duran said, the community just feels very cynical right now. And I mean, the very fact that we couldn't get Nika Song Young's address because board and commission members' addresses are confidential, which is in a small town like West Hollywood, that is wrong. If you're not willing to let your address be, your residential address be published, then you should not be a commissioner. And, you know, we really need to restore faith in government, and this would be a minimum requirement.
Sarah Adolphson, you have 45 seconds.
Thank you. I agree. Absolutely. I think they should be from West Hollywood. I do think that there should be some exceptions, as was alluded to by John and Steve. But I also agree that they should have specific qualifications to sit on commissioners. I'm a business owner. I couldn't imagine hiring anyone to do a job within my company that doesn't have experience or the qualifications or the know-how to do that job. And I think that should apply for the commissions as well. The city's incredibly important. We shouldn't play games.
Marquita Thomas, 45 seconds.
Thank you. I believe advisory board members and commissioners should live in West Hollywood with a few exceptions. Our trans advisory board, for example, they typically do not live in West Hollywood because of the many barriers keeping the trans community from living here. But in general, advisory boards and commissions are made better by people who understand the unique needs of the city. I think qualifications for advisory boards and commissions is basically just an ability to think critically and understand the culture of West Hollywood and an ability to make decisions that are best for the city.
Thank you, candidates. We are going to wrap up the topic of governance and ethics with Group 1. Group 1, your group is one smaller due to one candidate who did not join us for the forum this evening. With that said, John Heilman, Zakia Wright, and Chelsea Byers, in that order, 45 seconds. This is your question. Every city council serves its constituents. Who are your constituents? And do they or should they expand beyond the borders of West Hollywood? That question again, every city council serves its constituents. Who are your constituents? Do they or should they expand beyond the borders of West Hollywood? John Heilman, 45 seconds.
Thank you, Robert. I think our constituents are our residents here in the city of West Hollywood, but not just the current residents, the future residents of West Hollywood too, because we have to be mindful of what's going to happen in the future. The business community is also part of our constituents who we have to serve as well. And we do need to be mindful of the impacts of our decisions on those who live on our borders. Our neighbors to the north in Los Angeles, our neighbors to the west in Beverly Hills, we're surrounded by Los Angeles on the south and the east. Those are our neighbors. We have to be respectful of them, just as we would expect them to be respectful of us when they're making decisions that could impact our residents.
Zakia Wright, 45 seconds.
Thank you. I think all of our residents are our number 1 priority, and I will represent their interests when elected to city council. But I also think stakeholders have an important voice in our community. A lot of the business owners don't live in the city. A lot of the interest groups or not the interest groups, a lot of the folks that have an opinion on, the laws that we're passing, a lot of the folks that are affected by the laws that we're passing. Our economy is largely based on the TOT, which is the transit tax. And so there are folks that are traveling into our city. There are folks that work in our city that don't live here, and their voices matter. But again, the number 1 constituency are those that live here, that pay taxes here, and that vote here. And to touch on your last question regarding the boards and commissions, I don't believe that boards and commissioners have to live here, with a few exceptions for rent stabilization and some planning commissions. We know that this city is very expensive to live in, and had that been a requirement, I would not have been able to serve on the LGBTQ+ advisory board back in 2019. And so I think because
Zakia, we had to mute you because you did go over time. Chelsea Byers, 45 seconds.
Thank you. I have really long appreciated the way that West Hollywood defines its constituency, people who live, work, and play here. This is an important definition to the business community and also to our service provider community, which I know intimately through my work on the Human Services Commission. Our life-affirming resources care for people with unique needs all across the county, and we should be extremely proud of the way that we can leverage our resources to do such. We can also see how our city swells on a Friday night or through a community celebration like Pride, and we want all of the decisions that we make to matter and to be meaningful to people who see the city as home to them for whatever reason they come here. I think it's a really important definition that we hold, and I will celebrate that loudly. Thank you.
Candidates, we are going to move now to development and land use. Again, we have individual questions for each group. For group 3, 45 seconds, please. And we are going to begin with Sarah. This is your question. Sarah Dolphin, John Duran, Marquita Thomas, and Steve Martin in this group. The question, 45 seconds. What is your idea of responsible development? Again, what is your idea of responsible development? Sarah, 45 seconds, please.
I think responsible development is development that works closely with the city, that knows the city of West Hollywood, that knows our culture, that knows the kind of developments that we want to see, that the residents need, whether that be affordable housing. And I also think responsible development is environmentally friendly. And I believe that responsible development is developers that work with the community and give back in a meaningful way. And whether that be sending folks out to volunteer to clean up our streets or making donations to our local nonprofits, I think it's important that they make a meaningful difference in this community outside of that development.
John Duran, 45 seconds, please.
Economic development and housing development are both important priorities and goals, but they have to be balanced against environmental impacts. And that is the constant challenge in a city like West Hollywood that is completely built out. Our development along our commercial corridors, we've recently opened it to mixed use, and we have discovered that people do want to live on Beverly, on Melrose, on Santa Monica, and on the Sunset Strip. That is a plus. What we have to be careful is infill development in the residential neighborhoods, that we don't displace existing tenants, especially those that are being protected currently under the rent control ordinance. Displacing hundreds of tenants who are under rent control to bring in market rate units runs contrary to our housing policy. So you got to be very careful on the infill in the neighborhoods.
Marquita Thomas, 45 seconds.
Thank you. As a planning commissioner, when I'm looking to either approve or deny a project, I look at whether or not it's in line with our general plan and zoning ordinance. And I also look at the impact it will have on the surrounding area. And I look at whether or not it fits into the culture of West Hollywood and what impact it will have on the residents relative to traffic, sound, debris, light trespass, our environment, and parking.
Steve Martin, 45 seconds.
Well, unfortunately, our general plan and zoning don't mean a whole lot anymore because so many of the projects that we're getting happen through development agreements, which basically allow a developer to buy his or her way out of any kind of restrictions. I do think that staff and the Planning Commission need to ensure that there's like a Hippocratic oath for developers where they do no harm. I mean, we want to have economic benefit. We want to have environmental benefit. We want to get the housing and we want these developers to make money. We're not, we understand they're not in the business of charity, but we also want to make sure that we're getting value for what's being put in. And I think Lauren Meister has been really good about ensuring that we get dollar value. I can think of several instances where she has really squeezed developers to make sure we get the most out of development agreements. And then I would second what John Duran said about just.
When we talk about development and land use, this is a specific question for you, Group 1. This will mean you, Chelsea, you, John Heilman, and you, Zakia Wright. So Chelsea Byers, you're going to go first in this group. Here is your question for the candidates in Group 1. What do you see as the greatest obstacle to develop workforce housing in our city, and how do you solve it? Question again, what do you see as the greatest obstacle to develop workforce housing in our city, and how do you solve it? Chelsea Byers, 45 seconds.
Thank you for this question. Housing's been a really important topic to me my whole life since my family lost our home in the 2008 financial crisis. I've been very focused on how we can ensure cities are doing their part to make sure we have this housing, and workforce housing especially is challenging. We have to define who this workforce is. We have to make sure that they have transportation needs met so we can reduce the amount of parking spots that are required for these sort of units to be able to build at the density levels that we need. Workforce housing is a challenge because it's often affordable housing, and affordable housing does not come as easily as we need it to. So we need to make sure that our city is streamlining pathways for affordable housing like workforce housing to be able to be built. So that may mean making fast tracks, making sure that our city hall has the resources it needs to accelerate progress on this type of development. It's really important because people want to live in West Hollywood, and they can only do that if we have housing. Thank you.
John Heilman, 45 seconds.
Thank you. I really think that the issue of affordable housing and workforce housing can't be answered in 45 seconds. But as Chelsea indicated, we're a city that there's a high demand for people to live here. The land costs are really high. What I would recommend doing is that we look at form-based zoning rather than allocating a certain number of units per acre. We look at a box that a developer can build. They can build smaller units. We need to look at our parking standards and address that. That is a big impediment for those who develop housing. It substantially increases the cost, the high parking standards that we have for housing in West Hollywood, and we need to preserve our inclusionary ordinance.
And Zakia Wright.
In a city with 80% of its residents being voters, this issue is top of the mind. I think in order for us to really make sure that we're providing affordable housing, workforce housing, there has to be a true public-private partnership with the city committed to making strategic investments in infrastructure and utility upgrades to support our growing population. I also favor strategic updates to zoning laws and building codes to allow for innovative housing designs and create streamlined services and exemptions for CEQA when the affordable housing that we're considering will put more folks in their homes quicker. Thank you.
Thank you. And as we wrap up development and land use, that brings up you, Group 2. So this question will apply to Lauren Meister, Robert Oliver, Jordan Cockerham, and Adam Darvish. You will be the four that will answer this question. The question is, what is your position on the prospect of allowing more density in residential zones, such as R1B in West Hollywood? What is your position on the prospect of allowing more density in residential zones such as R1B in West Hollywood? Lauren Meister, we begin with you and 45 seconds.
Sure, thank you. Look, I've opposed state laws that take away local control from the cities, and I will continue to do so. The state doesn't know our city. No one knows our city better than our city and our residents of our city, and hopefully the people that are representing them. So I think that the state has actually tied our hands on creative development. The state is making it so that with bonuses, the developers are building basically luxury apartments, market rate apartments that people cannot afford. And as long as they give, 15% affordable, they get all kinds of bonuses, they get reduced parking. If the state would just lay off and give us back local control, we could dictate what kind of housing we want.
Robert Oliver, 45 seconds.
Thank you. We need more housing. There's no doubt about that, but we need a variety of housing. And in the variety of housing that we have in West Hollywood, that includes our few single family neighborhoods. I think there is plenty of underutilized space along our commercial corridors to build the kind of housing that we need to meet our need and our RENA numbers. There are only a few neighborhoods. We've got the Norma Triangle, West Hollywood West, the Poinsettias and Green Acre. And I don't think we need to develop in those neighborhoods. What we need to do is focus on prioritizing building the housing that we need along our commercial corridors.
Jordan Cockrum, 45 seconds.
Thank you. I think the question of higher density can't be answered with a simple yes or no. Every situation is different and we have to look at each one uniquely. Housing costs are rising for everyone, and we have to do everything that we can to make sure that our most vulnerable residents aren't getting priced out of the city. When new developments are proposed within the city, we have to make sure that they are not only respecting the integrity of the neighborhood, but that they're acknowledging and addressing the issues that the neighborhoods are facing. There has to be sufficient parking. They have to provide affordable units. They have to make sure that they are doing as much as they can to be green and sustainable, and they have to have as little impact on the neighborhoods that they're in as possible. Thank you so much.
And Adam Darvish.
Yes, this is an easy one for me. I would oppose any state infringement or control over our city, and it should be a local decision. I myself had experience after my garage and property was demolished by SUV that I mentioned earlier, and had to deal with street safety measures and speed humps and other traffic calming measures. And I found out that our city has to follow some of the state guidelines and federal guidelines, where the residents on the street where I live had the ideas of what they wanted to see for their own safety, but it was preventing our city to do more on our street because of that. So I totally oppose it. Thank you.
Candidates, thank you. And if you're all thinking, well, I wish I would have had a question from another group, just make a note to yourself and you can add it in your closing responses if there's something there that you want to address, because we are going to give you a chance for your closing statements. We're going to move on now to economic climate and community vitality. But before I ask individual questions to the group, I have a question for all of you. And guess what? It's rapid fire, no timer. So you keep it short because it's a short question. Okay, the question for all of you is as follows. Have you ever owned or managed operating expenses for a brick and mortar business? The question again, have you ever owned or managed operating expenses for a brick and mortar business? Zakia writes.
I owned my own law firm for 3 years.
John Heilman.
No.
Chelsea Byers.
No.
Adam Darvish.
Yes, I've been a CEO of hospitals throughout my profession and managed the budget and managed the team and collaborated in our community. So yes, definitely yes.
Jordan Cockrum,
No, I have not.
Robert Oliver,
My husband and I own and operate a small talent agency, but it is remote. So the answer is no, not brick and mortar, but yes, we own and operate a business.
Lauren Meister,
No, not a brick and mortar business, although I have run my own market research firm for many, many years.
Steve Martin. Off the mute button, Steve. Off the mute button, Steve.
Yes, I ran a law office for about a decade with 5 or 6 employees.
Marquita
Sorry.
Thomas,
I was on the finance committee of LA Pride, which was a multi-million-dollar budget.
John Duran,
No,
Sarah Adolphson,
I have run my company here in West Hollywood for the last 6 years. It's not brick and mortar, we're a service business, but yes, I know how to own and operate a business.
thank you all. Aren't those fun? We just move right past them and just keep moving on. This is a question for all candidates. With that said, I need you to try and limit your responses to 30 seconds each. I'm going to give you all a second to formulate your responses now as I read the question to you. In the topic of economic climate and community vitality, please remember from our neighborhood and community groups, this question is as follows. As a city council member, how will you protect neighborhood serving independent ma and pa small businesses to ensure they remain affordable and also sustainable? Candidates, this is for all of you. Again, the question is, as a city council member, how will you protect neighborhood serving independent ma and pa small businesses to ensure they remain affordable and also sustainable? Let's start with group 2 and Jordan Cockrum.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to do everything that I can to make sure that businesses, especially small ma and pa ones, are successful in our community. Supporting our businesses is incredibly important to the success of our city. It isn't lost on me at all that West Hollywood gets to provide all of the amazing services that it does for our residents and visitors thanks to the tax revenue that we collect from our businesses. We're still feeling the effects of COVID, and it's extremely important that we do everything we can to help get our businesses back on their feet and stay thriving and become thriving again. Because when it comes...
Thank you, Jordan. Lauren Meister.
Thank you. Well, I did try to limit formula retail, but that didn't go through. But I also initiated a small business task force to come up with a plan on how to build an environment for small neighborhood serving businesses. I initiated an item to provide affordable commercial spaces in new developments. And to make our business community more resilient, I initiated an economic development study to assess current economic conditions and to find the gaps in our goods and services. And we want to make sure that neighborhood serving businesses are affordable to our residents.
Adam Darvish.
Yes, sorry, my mute button wasn't working there, but I would first of all bring the wall down between the silos down between Chamber of Commerce and our City Hall, our City Council, and collaborate together to understand better what those businesses are going through. Each one may have a specific need due to what they serve or what their line of business is in our city, but first line is communication to understand and collaborate and help each other and help them to grow. So thank you so much.
The question again, as a city council member, how will you protect neighborhood serving independent ma and pa small businesses to ensure they remain affordable and also sustainable? John Duran, 30 seconds, please.
Yes, I got to correct the brick and mortar. I've had my own law firm for 35 years. Let me just say that. I forgot to say that. Regarding this particular question, people sometimes come up to me and say, how did you approve 3 Starbucks in like 4 square blocks? We don't. City Hall does not approve commercial tenancies. Property owners along the boulevards own property. They decide as entrepreneurs who to rent to. The one thing that city tries to do is over-regulate entrepreneurs and capital and businessmen and businesswomen. And that's what we should.
Sarah Adolphson.
These small businesses are the backbone of our community. It's what gives West Hollywood so much character. So first, I would rebuild the bridge between the city and the Chamber of Commerce. Second, I would revisit the minimum wage ordinance, because maybe some of these small businesses can't afford to hire staff at a higher rate. And then I would celebrate and market them more, and have more small business Sundays and Saturdays here in West Hollywood, and celebrate the work that our mom and pop stores are doing.
Steve Martin.
Well, I think that they were faced with skyrocketing rents, which are really tough for small businesses. I think that Lauren Meister's idea for a commercial vacancy tax is probably a good one. It's just that when she put it forward, it was pretty clear that the majority of her colleagues were not going to work to pass it. So I just didn't think it was a good time to bring it forward. I also, from talking to businesses, we really need to have the sheriff be more aggressive and deal with a lot of the problems that small businesses have. And I know there's a lot of concern about in the department about, well, we don't want to engage in catch and release. But
Marquita Thomas.
Thank you. The first thing we need to do is attract new business by streamlining the process of opening a business in West Hollywood. We need to set aside space for local businesses and new development. We need to work with Visit Weho to help promote boutique businesses. We need to facilitate adaptive reuse of vacant buildings, dissuade restrictive regulation on small businesses. We need to survey our businesses so that we know when they're in need. We definitely need to support Mayor Meister's Small Business Task Force, and we need to bring back the Small Business Roundtable and support the Metro line.
And just to repeat this all candidate question one more time, as a city council member, how will you protect neighborhood serving independent ma and pa small businesses to ensure they remain affordable and also sustainable? John Heilman, 30 seconds, please.
Thank you. I've always had a strong relationship with the business community, including creating the Visit West Hollywood organization, creating our business improvement districts on the Sunset Strip and the avenues of design. I think we need to have an ombudsperson at City Hall who will help small businesses when they're trying to open or trying to expand. I think we also need to make sure that we're reusing commercial spaces and allowing people to occupy them without necessarily providing all of the parking that would.
Zakia Wright.
I understand how critical our local businesses are to the prosperity of West Hollywood. A few weeks back, I met a woman who owns a store on the east side, and she was in tears because she was discussing how code compliance has caused her revenue to decrease by 25%. And so I'd be an advocate of reviewing our municipal codes to make sure that they're reasonable and equitably applied, and review the impact of local taxes and fees on business revenues, as well as business growth and retention.
And Chelsea Byers.
Thank you. Small businesses need people, and I want to see more people getting out of their cars, walking and riding bikes in our community. My vision for a more enhanced, walkable, and safe environment for West Hollywood is data-backed gold for small businesses. The work of protecting and supporting our small businesses also begins when they're trying to open. We need to streamline their processes, make it faster. There's no reason a small business opening on Santa Monica Boulevard needs 14 months to open. We need to fast track that so they can start getting to work right away in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, a question for you all. This question, what is your position on the future of outzones? Candidates, what is your position on the future of outzones?
Robert, excuse me, I haven't had a chance to answer the last question.
I'm sorry, did we miss you? I apologize. You could please go ahead.
Thank you, sir. So I would just say there's no one size fits all policy when it comes to helping our businesses. We need to first and foremost focus on safety. It's hard enough to open or operate a business, but when businesses are left to bear the brunt of the humanitarian crises that we're experiencing, that's an unsustainable situation. We need to create more opportunities to create smaller commercial spaces, perhaps expediting permits to create these smaller spaces from larger ones. And first and foremost, I'm going to listen first, not lecture.
Thank you again, all candidates, for answering that question. And now we are going to go on to this question. What is your position on the future of out zones? Let's start with group 3. Marquita Thomas, would you like to kick things off with a 30-second answer, please?
Sure. So outdoor operations have been a critical lifeline to businesses and have given our residents an opportunity to connect safely while patronizing their favorite businesses. I believe our out zones should be incorporated into our zoning ordinance, and I believe that the current out zones should be classified as legal non-conforming and protected from future regulations, provided that they do not cause a hazard or hinder ADA accessibility.
Steve Martin?
Well, I think the out zones, they've proven to be a success, but they've also proven to be a hazard for pedestrians and particularly for people with disabilities. I think that we're going to have to commit to, particularly on Santa Monica Boulevard, if we're going to have out zones, we're going to have to do a major reconfiguration of the street so that we actually have sidewalks and usable space.
Sarah Dolphin.
I love them, but I would want to get some more information and do a study to see how they're affecting traffic, how they're affecting mobility for pedestrians, for people, wheelchairs, walkers, for our bikes. So I would want to know a little bit more about the effect that that's having, but I think that they're great. And I think it's attracted more people to our restaurants and getting out and socializing more. So for that reason, I support them.
John Duran.
I think generally they're very helpful as we all went through the COVID pandemic. And I see how they're very effective in outdoor seating for restaurants or nightclubs and bars. However, having said that, they do take away from parking. They do make the sidewalks very difficult to navigate, especially for pedestrians or people who are just trying to make use of the sidewalks. So I think we need to take a good hard look at these and figure out what districts they make sense in and which need to be returned back to the public.
What is your position on the future of out zones? Zakia Wright, 30 seconds.
Out zones have been a crucial lifeline to our businesses. I would like to see it expanded to the businesses on the east side as well. I know a lot of those businesses sometimes feel left out with all of the things happening on the west side. And so I think that there should be a fair implementation of that project. I'd also like to see us expanding it. Since there is sort of the navigation and mobility issue on sidewalks on the west side because of the out zones, we should look at what the traffic studies and things like that is, as if we could open up that Santa Monica and have it open to pedestrian traffic on the weekends.
Chelsea Byers.
Thank you. I'm highly supportive of out zones. I do think, and it seems we all agree, that they need a review of some sort, but ultimately they've demonstrated what's possible when we think of our shared space differently, and they offer us an opportunity to reconfigure our built environment. I am noticing that in many cases, they're not distributed equitably throughout the city, and I want to see more businesses have this opportunity. So I hope that comes with this review. Thank you.
John Heilman.
I think, like everyone else said, people really like the out zones generally, the ability to have outdoor dining. When we implemented this program right before everything shut down, or when things shut down, I thought it was going to be a great program, and it has proven to be so. But we do need to look at each location individually to make sure there aren't safety problems, to make sure there aren't mobility problems. Rather than having a categorical one-size-fits-all approach, we need to look at each location individually.
What is your position on the future of out zones? Robert Oliver, 30 seconds.
I think that the out zones are great. They bring vibrance to the community and they're helping our businesses, many of them still struggling to overcome the pandemic and the shutdowns. But we do have to look at them individually and from different perspectives. There's the planning perspective, there's the parking perspective, and there's the safety perspective. We need to make sure there's adequate pedestrian space on the sidewalk and that we're not creating impediments for seniors, people living with disabilities, and others with mobility challenges. So we really need to take a comprehensive approach.
Adam Darvish.
Yes, I totally support the out zones, and I believe that it helps our city to come back alive. If Manhattan could do it, we can do it in our city, and it gives me that feel of the energy of New York City, and it really feels me, makes me feel alive again. I'll leave it up to our expert at City Hall to look at the safety features and all of that. I know we have experts, but also would like to see more of our police force helping us to feel safer so that we could have outdoor.
Lauren Meister.
Yeah, I agree with John Heilman that you have to look at these on a case-by-case basis. Definitely the out zones had its purpose, it served its purpose, but we're looking at places on where there are competing interests, possible bike lanes, pedestrians, scooters, all of these other things. We already have widened sidewalks on Santa Monica Boulevard. We're looking at putting a bike lane on Fountain. That means people are going to be depending on Santa Monica Boulevard. So we need to look at this case by case. There's no one size fits all.
And Jordan Cochran.
Thank you. Yes, I'm a huge supporter of out zones. We all live in California for a reason. We like being outside. I do think a lot of candidates are sort of playing politics per se when they say things like, well, it's good, but we have to look at it from this perspective, or we have to think about this, or you have to think about that. People don't want to choose a side, but ultimately, yeah, we do like out zones. And yes, of course, we do need to make sure that we aren't hindering people with disabilities. But ultimately, it's been great for business. It's been great for the community, and people enjoy it. And as city council members, our job is to serve the
Candidates, thank you. And thank you for answering that question for us. As we wrap up economic, climate, and community vitality, we have another group question for you. We are going to not use the clock because I'm going to ask you to try and keep this as a short answer. Try for 10 seconds. I think you can do it. I will give you a minute to formulate your response to the question. What is your position on SB 980 to allow alcohol service to 4 a.m. and why? What is your position on SB 980 to allow alcohol service to 4 a.m. and why? Give you a minute to breathe, and we will go down the list and begin with Chelsea Byers.
Thank you. I'm supportive of this legislation. I think it allows for us to think of more opportunities to support and maintain our local business. It also allows us to think of how we can reinforce a more safe nightlife sphere for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. John Heilman.
I'm opposed to it. I don't think it will work in West Hollywood where our businesses are so closely located near our residences.
Zakia Wright.
I think generally I'm in support of it, but I would like to see it on a pilot basis. That way we can see what the effect is on the community to see if it's sort of worth that, to extend it.
Lauren Meister.
Yeah, this state legislation is actually about a pilot, but I voted against it. For the same reasons as John mentioned. Our residential community abuts a commercial. It's just really not a great idea.
Robert Oliver.
I'm inclined to oppose it on public safety grounds, but I would like to hear first from residents, from businesses, and from workers who will actually be the ones to encounter more hours of patrons in the wee hours of the night.
Jordan Cochran.
I certainly support the idea of it, and I like that it gives the city the ultimate authority on how they want to implement it, whether it be 4 a.m. every night or just 4 a.m. on special occasions like Pride.
Adam Darvish.
Support it if it's done correctly and protected the residential streets, and I would love to compete with Manhattan and have the city have longer hours. Thank you.
To repeat this quickly for our audience members and our candidates, what is your position on SB 980 that would allow alcohol service to continue until 4 a.m. and why? We are looking for 10-second responses. We move to Sarah Adolphson.
I'm inclined to oppose it for the same reason that John Heilman and Lauren Meister said. It gets rowdy on the streets after 2 a.m. and I don't think that that's fair to our residents.
John Duran.
Opposed to it. Nothing good happens between 2 and 6 in the morning. Seriously, people go to bed. The night is done. It's closing time. Let everybody get to sleep.
Marquita Thomas.
I appreciate the spirit in which this legislation was created. It was created to help businesses that were hardest hit by the pandemic, but I don't think that it works in West Hollywood. It's not great for our city.
And Steve Martin.
Well, I think this is another half-baked idea from Scott Wiener. I've talked to bar owners, and creates a lot of expense, more liability. It's going to totally change how we have to patrol for law enforcement. We're going to have to redeploy, reschedule. We're going to have a bunch of people coming into West Hollywood at 1:30 in the morning and leaving at 4:30. It just really doesn't make a lot of sense.
Candidates, thank you. I'm really proud of you for sticking with time, and we are basically right on time. I'd like to cover transportation with you all before we take audience questions. And if we can do this again, a 30-second response. I would like to hear from all of you to these 2 questions, if we could. So again, 30 seconds. This is the first question regarding transportation. What is your vision for the Metro to West Hollywood? Should we spend the money? The question, what is your vision for the Metro to West Hollywood? Should we spend the money? I would like all of you to have a chance to answer this. Adam Darvish, 30 seconds, please.
Absolutely support this, and I think we need more of that and connecting other people to West Hollywood to boost our economy, businesses, and also have a city that could be accessible to others.
Jordan Cockrum.
Yes, I absolutely support spending money on expanding the metro. Extending the metro line into West Hollywood is a no-brainer. West Hollywood is home to tens of thousands of residents, workers, and visitors every year. We're 1.9 square miles, so parking and traffic is an issue, and we don't have room for every one of those thousands of people to have cars here. So having the metro in West Hollywood allows people to live, work, and play here.
Robert Oliver.
I'm really excited to see Metro come to West Hollywood. We are a city that is primed for a subway. And I've been advocating since 2017 for the hybrid alignment. I think that's the best alignment. It will connect East and West Hollywood. It'll connect our Rainbow District and Cedars-Sinai and get us connected to the rest of LA. So I'm excited for it. I think it will help alleviate a lot of the issues that we're facing with traffic and parking. And I think we should invest to move the timeline ahead and make sure that we're getting the metro as quickly as possible.
Lauren Meister.
Yeah, thank you. We've already invested hundreds and thousands of dollars to accelerate the line. I do believe that the hybrid line, as long as it's underground, will serve our community best. But I also believe that when the stations open on Wilshire, that we should expand our city lineups to meet that. We can continue to lobby for Metro, but we can't and wait for Metro.
What is your vision for the Metro to West Hollywood? Should we spend the money? Zakia Wright, 30 seconds.
Yes, absolutely. The hybrid model, which is, a model that a lot of West Hollywood residents favor, hits the most businesses down our commercial corridor. And so if we can do something to make sure that our businesses are being visited by more folks outside of our city, then I think that we should. And also, as we're looking at lowering parking minimums and residential parking, we have to make sure that folks can get where they need to go without using emissions and vehicles and things like that to get around. So yes.
John Heilman.
Thank you. I've been a long supporter of bringing Metro to West Hollywood throughout my career on the city council. We got in the county tax measure, but it's not for a long time. While on the city council, I also initiated the study to identify additional resources that would allow us to expedite the construction of the line so we don't have to wait till 2040, that we could get it built in the next 4 or 5 years. So I'm very supportive of it, and I want to see Metro brought to West Hollywood while I'm alive.
Chelsea Byers.
Thank you. As someone who relies on public transportation to navigate this region, I've been a longtime advocate for the Metro and this specific expanded route. For the climate, for the benefit of connectivity, and for the way that this will just transform people's day-to-day lives, I am so in support of immediate investments to ensure that we can accelerate the progress. The Fairfax-San Vicente route will serve the most jobs and residents of any route in this region. It'll also connect us to major cultural resources. I appreciate the investment we've already made, and whether it's above ground or underground, we need it as soon as possible.
One more time. What is your vision for the Metro to West Hollywood? Should we spend the money? Steve Martin, 30 seconds.
Well, as a homeowner, I mean, it's going to help my property values. But you know, the city's already committed something like 25% of the $1.3 billion cost. And I think that the residents really need to have that outlined exactly how that's going to be paid for, because it's going to be a real challenge for whoever's on the city council. Because even if we're elected, we're not going to be the people who are going to be impacted by it. But I do think it's a good idea, and I am supportive.
Marquita Thomas.
Yes, I do support it. We have a climate action and adaptation plan that calls for us to lower emissions and reduce our residents' reliance on cars, and the Metro is going to do that. It's also going to be a powerful revenue generator for our city and for our businesses. And it is going to help our residents as well as our visitors get to destinations, key destinations and job centers quickly and efficiently. I'm really happy to see the city decide on the San Vicente hybrid, which will take a little bit longer and it's going to cost a little bit more, but ultimately we'll get more people to more destinations and the benefits will outweigh the cost.
John Duran.
My many years on the council, I often joined a split vote on the council 3-2 in order to study the issue and bringing Metro to West Hollywood. I've always supported that. But I also always said, not if you're just going to bring it up La Brea, because then we don't have any skin in the game. If you're just going to bring it up La Brea, it's not going to do any of us any good. So it's got to come up San Vicente, Fairfax, and it's got to be underground to avoid having impacts on the people in our community.
Sarah Adolphson.
Yeah, I'm all for it. I think it's going to add to the diversity of this community. I think it's going to bring in new businesses, more consumers to our existing businesses. It's great for the environment. It'll alleviate traffic and parking, which I know is a problem here in the city. And I think it's a great idea.
Thank you, candidates. We are to the last prepared question before we get to the audience question, and the League of Women Voters of Greater Los Angeles is vetting those many questions for us now, and we will get to as many as possible. And audience, thank you so much for writing in. And if you continue to ask questions, remember our deadline for those was 6 o'clock tonight. Our final question is still on the topic of transportation. Give you all a chance to answer this. It is a 30-second answer. And the question is as follows. Do you support the mobility program of on-demand dockless bikes and scooters? Candidates, do you support the mobility program of an on-demand dockless bikes and scooters? Marquita Thomas, would you kick things off with 30 seconds, please?
Absolutely. I do not own a car, and I'm a huge supporter of alternative modes of transportation, particularly micro-mobility options. And even though I have never personally ridden a scooter, I know that they are a necessary addition to our city as we work to reduce emissions and traffic. We do, however, need to make sure that our residents are able to utilize micro-mobility safely. I support protected micro-mobility lanes and resident education on how our drivers can share the road with micro-mobility so that everyone can get to where they need to go safely.
Sarah Adolphson.
I agree. I think they're a great idea. They're great for the environment, and they're great for folks who don't have access to vehicles. I do think, though, that we need to protect our sidewalks. A lot of people do not pay attention to the signs, and they're riding their scooters and their bikes on the sidewalks, which is unsafe for our pedestrians. I think that if we can expand bike lanes or figure out better systems to get those scooters, get those bikes off our sidewalks, I think that they're going to be a great value add to the city.
Steve Martin.
Well, I think that there's obviously a lot of support for it, but from my observations, it's really been difficult for pedestrians like me and other seniors. But also, the vast majority of people using these are not using them for commuting; they're using them for entertainment. And I mean, on one hand, yeah, I want people to come to West Hollywood and have fun, but I do think we need to put a lot more thought on how we actually integrate this program safely into the community.
John Duran.
No, the key word here was dockless. Clutter and chaos. That's all we see are scooters placed all throughout the city where pedestrians have to navigate, hop over them. People with disabilities can't get by. We are not a dumping ground for the scooters company. If you want to talk about proper docking of scooters and e-bikes, fine. That's a different conversation. But dockless, we are not a community for clutter and chaos on our sidewalks.
Do you support the mobility program of an on-demand dockless bikes and scooters? 30 seconds to use, Akia Wright.
Yes, I do. I actually own my own personal scooter, and it's super convenient to get around. I think some of the early issues that have been raised with the dockless scooters are parking those and discarding them in people's driveways, them tipping over and blocking egress and ingress, and being hard for those that are differently able to be able to move them. I've noticed more recently that the operating companies have done a better job of zones. And so scooters will just stop working in certain areas. And I think that's been helpful for homeowners. And I think we can be better neighbors by picking up scooters, those of us that are able to. That way our differently able neighbors don't have to worry about being obstructed.
Chelsea Byers.
Yes, I'm very supportive of this program. I believe it's one that helps us create greater connectivity between our cities and the region. It's also allows for people to find alternatives. When the bus is late, when the bus doesn't show up, you can grab a scooter and get where you need to go. I am very concerned about the concerns raised by people living with disabilities and older adults in our community. And I think we need to continue to work with our providers to make sure that we can hear those concerns. Ultimately, we know protected bike lanes are the answer and the solve to make sure that we have the space we need to allow for this to thrive. Thank you.
John Heilman.
Thank you. I haven't been a big fan of the scooters, but I realize that I'm older and I'm not likely going to be one of the users. I am concerned that this program has a lot of safety impacts on pedestrians, and those need to be addressed. I also am concerned about the riders who are riding many times. I see them late at night riding in what I would describe as a reckless manner. So if we're going to keep this program, we need to work on those safety issues and do a much better job with those safety issues.
Do you support the mobility program of an on-demand dockless bikes and scooters? Robert Oliver.
So I like scooters in general, and I think that so trying to get people out of cars, it's a great option. But when it comes to this program, I think we put the cart before the horse a bit. We launched this program before we had the micromobility lanes in place, and our city is left dealing with the consequences. It shouldn't be city resources being used to keep riders off of sidewalks and to keep scooters from being strewn about. The companies need to hold their riders accountable, and we need the micromobility lanes in this city as quickly as possible.
Jordan Cockrum, 30 seconds.
Yes, I'm a huge supporter of them. They are a great resource if they're used properly. For those who are against them, it's not the devices that are the issues, it's the users. Having those micro-mobility options in West Hollywood allows people to live, work, and play here. It provides more opportunities to help people get around who don't have cars, because not everyone is as wealthy as some of the people who are against these programs, and they don't have cars. It helps bring the best talent in LA to our area and our businesses, and helps alleviate traffic and reduce our carbon footprint on the planet.
Adam Darvish.
Yes, I absolutely support this. As a victim of an accident with an SUV, drove in and almost killed me at over 100 miles per hour. I would rather to get hit by a scooter and SUV, a BMW SUV that weighs a ton. So I'm a big supporter of this. I was actually the one that spoke at Transportation Committee to report some issues in support of our disabled residents and older adults. So I'll just needs to, work out some of the kinks and hopefully expand it. Thank you.
And Lauren Meister.
Adam, you don't want to get hit by a scooter. Right now, our pedestrians don't feel safe because bikes and scooters are using the sidewalk. We're dealing with competing interests, and the city has to strive to do a better job so there's less conflict with pedestrians. Otherwise, we're not going to be known as the most walkable city. So the way our infrastructure is right now, I am not a fan.
Lauren, thank you very, very much. Everyone, thank you for your answers. And as we look to the time right now, the League of Women Voters of Greater Los Angeles has vetted a lot of these questions, a lot of the topics you all have covered, and they deem it best that we give our audience and you all the chance for your closing statements. Hang on one second. They're giving me the questions. Just for our candidates to keep this in mind, this is some of what the audience and the residents of Los Angeles, West Hollywood, sorry, are telling me.
Okay, yeah, just go ahead and read.
So can we ask these or no? Would you rather go through? We're running a little long. Give us a second. We're just trying to see if we can ask these questions, or would you rather just have them put them out there?
Why don't we have Paula ask the first question?
Okay, what we're gonna do is, because you know what? The people of West Hollywood deserve to hear more, right? Do we all agree? And if you candidates can just indulge us and stay a little while longer, we'd really appreciate it, because we have a very active audience that's watching and listening, and it's important to them. So Paula from the League of Women Voters of Greater Los Angeles, I'm going to introduce you. What Paula's going to do is she's going to ask as many questions. We may just be able to get to one because we do want to hear closing statements. And candidates, you see, you raise your hand. If you want to answer the question, you don't have to. If you want to answer the question, please go ahead. Let's get right to it. Paula, welcome. And I'm going to have you just pick the question that the league would like answered.
Okay, so the first question is, what is your plan to engage the younger population as voters and renters?
Do I see hands? And I pick randomly. Adam Darvish.
Yes, absolutely. And
real quick on these answers, please, everyone, not to interrupt.
Yes, I would like to involve the younger generations and understand and hear from them about all the issues, from safety to mobility to housing and everything else that goes along. Thank you.
Lauren Meister, I see you're up.
Yes, thank you. We just had an item passed that I brought forward to organize an educational sessions about the city of West Hollywood to provide interested community members with an in-depth understanding of city programs, services, and departments, and to promote civic engagement and involvement. And I hope that young people will take these courses.
Zakia Wright, I see your hand up.
I think in order to engage a younger generation, we have to make sure that a younger generation is represented on the city council. I think we need to make sure we're being in the places that young folks are, and that we're making ourselves available and accessible at the times that's convenient for them. Thank you.
And Sarah, you got to make this quick because we've got to get going.
I absolutely do think we need to engage younger voters. We want them to stay and live in West Hollywood for a long time to come. So whatever programs we can work with them on, I think we need to do it and prioritize it.
Candidates, thank you all. We really appreciate it. You know, West Hollywood may not be a big city, but wow, does it have a lot of issues, doesn't it? So with that said, we do want to give you all time for your closing statements. And we are going to, sorry, that was my phone talking to me, saying it's not sure it understands. Well, okay, let's see. The closing statements, we are going to begin with John Heilman. John Heilman, for your closing statement, you have 45 seconds.
Well, thank you, Robert. And I want to thank all of the neighborhood groups and the League of Women Voters, Genevieve, Dr. McTaggart, And thank you to everyone who's watched this forum tonight. I also want to thank all of the candidates for sharing their views. I have a strong record of getting things done here in the city of West Hollywood. People know that I have worked very hard. In fact, I've dedicated my entire life to serving the people and the community of West Hollywood. I do that because I love this city and I'm committed to it being better. I want us to get back to basics, public safety, serving the residents, but I also want to lead us into the future. And I look forward to your vote on November 8th. Thank you.
Thank you, John Heilman. Zakia Wright.
Thank you for a great evening. I've heard from so many residents and they want more from the city council. They want to know that their concerns are being addressed. They want to know that there are solutions that are inclusive of their viewpoints and their perspectives and who they are. We need leaders at the table that are bridge builders. We need leaders at the table that will forge strong relationships and partnerships and collaborate with all of the interests in this city to make sure that we are making this city better for everyone. This city is amazing and it's represented some amazing things. And we have the ability and the power to make decisions now that will welcome a generation from here to come. So let's make sure we're welcoming those folks and not closing the door. My name is Zakia Wright. Thank you.
Thank you, Zakia Wright. Chelsea Byers, your closing statement.
Thank you to the league, the chamber, all the neighborhood groups, our moderator for creating this space and all the candidates for being a part of it. I understand as a community that we are in the crosshairs of change. We do not want to forget our past. We have a history that is so unique and valuable as a city, and we cannot move into the future by holding on to the past so much that we lose our focus. We need someone who has both a deep appreciation for where we've come from and a deep understanding of where we need to go to tackle our most pressing issues, including climate change, housing and healthcare and mobility safety. We need someone who's connected to and collaborates with all of our regional partners to get West Hollywood all that we need to thrive. The most important thing to me is that we live up to our core values and a future that we create together. I'm incredibly proud of the coalition we've built. I hope I can keep getting to know each and every one of you. Chelsea for Weho.com, and I'll see you in the street.
We move on with our closing statements. Thank you, Chelsea Byers. To Lauren Meister.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you to the Chamber and the Coalition and the League of Women Voters. I've lived in West Hollywood over 30 years, both as a renter and a homeowner. Like you, I love West Hollywood, but we have serious challenges and we need people on the dais who will take these challenges seriously. This is a time when council priorities must be laser focused on local issues affecting our residents and businesses like public safety, homelessness, and affordability, not future political careers and not special interests outside our city. This is a time when experience matters most. I started my journey in public service advocating for our neighborhoods, and I'm still your neighborhood advocate on council. I've worked hard to represent you in the best interests of the city. Tonight, I respectfully ask for your vote. Thank you. Meisterforweho.com.
Lauren Meister, thank you. Robert Oliver.
I'm running for West Hollywood City Council to keep our city a safe, vibrant, and thriving community for everyone. We're a small but mighty city, but the city that we love is facing some serious challenges right now. I think that we can work together. We can come together as one community again to build a more just and equitable society. But at the same time, we can take every measure to keep our city safe and address crime. These are not mutually exclusive goals. In fact, the two are dependent on one another. So I want everyone in this community, residents today and future residents, to know that they're safe, that they're welcome in this city, and I want more to experience what I experienced here as a young gay man. I humbly ask for your vote this November. RobertForWeho.com. Thank you.
Robert Oliver, thank you. Jordan Cockerham, your closing statement.
Thank you all so much for having us and listening to us speak tonight. I hear your concerns, and as a city councilor, my job is to listen to what the residents and the stakeholders of West Hollywood want. It's not to push my own agenda, and that's what I'm going to do. I've spent my entire campaign listening to and talking to the experts on all of the different issues that our city is facing. I'm not an expert on every single issue, and none of the candidates are. What I am good at is talking to those who are experts, gathering as much information as I can and making an informed decision. I want to hear from you now, and I want to hear from you when I'm on council. If you have any questions, concerns, ideas, or just want to talk about the city, please call or email me. You can find that information on my website, jordanforweho.com, FOR, not the number 4. Thank you again so much for your time, and thank you for your commitment and care for the city. My name's Jordan Cockrum, and I hope I can count on your vote in November. Thank you.
Jordan Cockrum, thank you. Adam Darvish.
I would like to thank the league and chamber and whoever had put this together. Really appreciate it, and also the applicants. I learned more about each one of you, although I know some of you. I will be your true candidate, independent candidate. As I mentioned, I'm not getting any endorsement or contributions from the union, from the developers or elected officials. I am your immigrant that came to this country with a lot of passion, a lot of love for the country and for the city that I've lived in for 27 years. And what I went through 2 years ago drove me to this point. So you can have my commitment 24/7 to be your representative in that seat. And I will act on your issues because I was a resident that had been there with you. So thank you so much.
Adam Darvish, thank you. We move on with our closing statements to Sarah Adolphson.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, League of Women Voters, the Chamber of Commerce, and Weho for the people for putting this on tonight. It's been fun. I am not a career politician. I'm here simply because I love this city. And while I don't know if I have all the answers, I know what I'm extremely good at, and that is listening to people, identifying their hopes, their dreams, their concerns, and then going out and finding the resources, the opportunities, and the partnerships to help them realize that change and get the outcomes that they want. And that is exactly what I will be for the residents of West Hollywood. It's what I am to my clients. It's what I've done for my entire career. And I am here to support you, West Hollywood. So thank you. I hope you'll vote for me on November 8th. You can find more information on sarahadolphson.com.
Sarah Adolphson, thank you. John Duran.
Thank you to everybody who put this on. So there's a saying, it says, if you're a liberal when you're young, then shows you got a good heart. But if you don't have any common sense when you get older, it shows you got no head. And I have to ask, for the past 2 years, how are things going, West Hollywood? The city is teetering and falling off the rails in the past 2 years. And you're given a very clear choice. You can either get a mini-me version of the current council, because the current council are supporting some of these candidates. You can get a mini-me version, or you can go back to what we had. A strong relationship with the Sheriff's Department, a strong relationship with the Chamber of Commerce, economic prosperity. All of these things were put in place because so many of us worked so hard to build this city. It's all under threat. Let's get back to sanity. John Duran on November the 8th.
John Duran, thank you. Marquita Thomas.
Thank you. I would like to thank everyone involved with organizing tonight's forum. West Hollywood has been my home for 27 years. I am the CEO of a chamber that serves the largest metro area in the country. I'm a renter, a transit rider, and I experience many of the same things that many of our working residents do, more so than some of the other candidates. I'm not just pro-business, I'm also pro-working people. I advocate for workers, and I've also secured billions of dollars in opportunities for women, minority, LGBT, and veteran-owned businesses. I support law enforcement, but also know that public safety is a collaborative effort between everyone in the city. The residents made their voices heard in 2020. They want bold new voices on the city council. I am running to be one of those bold voices, and you can find out more about me at Weho.com.
Marquita Thomas, thank you. And finally, Steve Martin.
Well, the vision of West Hollywood's future is not going to be found by looking in the rearview mirror. But having said that, I've got the experience and the proven ability to bring people together and get things done. This city is in crisis because we have incompetent, self-righteous leaders. With the exception of Lauren Meister, people are not focused on West Hollywood or what is best for our community. They're playing to political ambitions and outside groups. We really need to bring West Hollywood back home. There's a lot of challenges that need to be met. We've got a crisis with law enforcement and public safety. We've got a crisis in housing. We've got to keep people in their homes. And we really need to bring some common sense back to City Hall.
Those were our closing statements from our candidates. I want to thank the League of Women Voters of Greater Los Angeles, the West Hollywood Chamber of Commerce, and all of our candidates for participating, and especially those amazing neighborhood groups that came together in an unprecedented way to come up with the questions that were asked of you all tonight. But as I leave you, this is just a note to our audience. We really appreciate you watching. You can share this throughout social media. They're on a number of different platforms, including the West Hollywood Chamber, and as well as the League of Women Voters of Greater Los Angeles. But audience, I'm gonna leave you with 3 numbers, even though I work for Channel 4, 3 numbers to remember. There are 3 seats open for election to the West Hollywood City Council. The last day to register to vote is the 24th of October. Election day is November 8th. Please mark those numbers down as you learn more about these candidates, and trust me, they are out there and they are all accessible and available to you. And remember, just go to weho.org/elections to register to vote and to learn anything more about the election process in the amazing city of West Hollywood. Candidates, I thank you for joining us this evening, and I really appreciate your time and appreciate all the work that went into this forum. It was a pleasure seeing you all again. I'm Robert Kovacik. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.